Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right, we're talking Friday the 13th on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you as close as we can from Camp Crystal Lake. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. We're going to unpack all the gory details of Friday the 13th in the hopes that a camp counselor's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust to help me get directions from a dog, the one and the only Gina Radcliffe. How you doing, Gina?
I am swell. How are you?
I'm excellent. I can't wait to get started. This week, we have a couple of dandies. Actually, they're not. Neither of these people are dandies. I think Annie is stoned the entire time. We're talking about Friday the 13th. We've discussed the first two deaths in this particular movie's storied history. And we're now moving on to death 3 and 4. And we move to the quote unquote modern day here with Annie, who is the proposed cook of the newly to be reopened Camp Crystal Lake. And we meet Annie coming into what could be described as some sort of Dickensian version of New Jersey.
Oh no, there's definitely parts of New Jersey that actually look like that. I always assume that it's supposed to take place somewhere in the Pine Barrens, which if you go to the Pine Barrens, it's, I hate to resort to cliches, but it's very possible you'll hear banjos playing somewhere. I mean, when people think of New Jersey, they tend to think of like the opening credits to The Sopranos, the Garden State Parkway,
sure,
in the Manhattan skyline off in the distance. But there is a very large section of New Jersey that's very rural and very depressed, I guess, both depressing and depressed.
Well, it quickly becomes almost sort of Pennsylvania very quickly, where there's vast expanses of incredibly green land. Like everywhere you look, it is just bathed in bright green, as opposed to here in Los Angeles, where everywhere you look, it is brown. So it is very, very green in New Jersey. There's a lot of wooded areas. It seems very tick infested. Annie comes into town and she decides the very first thing that she does is ask a dog for directions. This is what leads me to believe that Annie is high as a kite.
Or she's just, a quirky free spirit who possibly is also still high.
Yes, she very well could be a quirky free spirit, but she's also stoned out of her damn gourd. She's wearing the most amount of clothes you can possibly wear on a summer's day. She's got strapped to every part of her. She's wearing everything that she owns that she didn't leave in the van that's going around following the dead that particular summer. And Annie then, after not getting the answers that she wanted from a dog, walks into what could only be described as the Red Herring Cafe, because it's populated by an entire group of people who look at her like they want to murder her.
Yeah, this is some straight up David Lynch shit here, because you really expect the theme to Twin Peaks to be playing when she walks in there. Mm-hmm. Everybody sitting there is just kind of shady and grimy and just eyeing her like a chicken fried steak.
Oh God. Yeah, they really are immediately set off. Like, what is this person whose name, last name, and business I don't know is come into this cafe? Who are you? She asks, hey, I'm going up to Camp Crystal Lake. Does anyone know how I can get there? And that the immediate response is, you mean Camp Blood? Now, Gina, if you are working at a place, let's just say it's an office park, and you asked for directions from the local Starbucks, and the person behind the counter said, oh, you mean Office Park Blood? Would you continue driving there?
Well, I would probably, at least, want to ask, like, where did it get this name? Could you maybe, give me a little background story on this? And yeah, I would definitely, this would definitely be a situation where I would require more information.
She does get it, but she never really, she asked for it eventually, but it doesn't come out right away. The owner or proprietor of this particular cafe, who is lorded over by the most giant man with a broom. And then the proprietor goes, "Oh, Enos, you're going towards the that's the truck driver's name." And he looks like an Enos. Outside of the Enos on Dukes of Hazzard, he's the only other Enos I can really remember. And she goes, "You're going to the crossroads. Why don't you take her?" And this seems to be, it's like, well, sure. I'm done with my coffee. Let's go get into my ratty truck and I will take you to the crossroads.
Nothing possibly dangerous or potentially rapey about this situation. Here, let this shady looking stranger take you in his serial killer truck to Camp Blood.
Yes. You've already been informed of where you're going, Camp Blood. Now this person you don't know is going to take you there. And I don't know how anyone in the 70s survived hitchhiking. I just don't know. It seems insanely dangerous. And yet people do it all the time in the media that you see from this particular era. So they take off to get into Enos's truck. Enos goes, "Are all the camp counselors as good looking as you?" Which she doesn't know. And if that's flirting, Enos, walk it back a notch. That's not going to get you anywhere. Along the way, we meet Ralph, or as he's affectionately known, Crazy Ralph. This is strike number 2. You come into town, you don't know where you're going. You're told where you are going. He has a nickname called Camp Blood. And then along the way, you meet a guy whose nickname is Crazy. And unless it's because he does a lot of donuts in the church parking lot, I would back off from that.
Yeah.
I just would. But I'm a scaredy cat. Crazy Ralph then does his, he makes a pronouncement that place, quote unquote, has a death curse. It's got a death curse. And then he rides away on his bike with the most amazing posture I've ever seen of a person riding a bike.
Yeah, this is like he he grew up with someone poking a pencil or a ruler into his back over and over again.
Yes, absolutely. He to reference Mr. Science Theater 3000, which might become a motif here, he's a posture pal. I look at him and I go, well, there's a loser who's probably drunk all the time. He lives in a hovel, but he has better posture than I ever will. And I kind of feel lesser for it.
He's winning. He's winning in one area of his life at least.
Absolutely.
Now here's the question. Mm-hmm. How much do you think Annie is making as the camp cook? That she's just going to basically blow off, you Camp Blood and people acting and looking like characters in Eraserhead. I mean, how much could she possibly be making slinging around 2-gallon cans of chocolate pudding and making
lots of beans,
making shit on a shingle every morning? Right. What could she be making? $30 a week. I mean, it's
probably.
Go hitchhike till you could find a job at the local Kmart. This is just this was the late 70s. You could still find a job waiting tables or working at a store that might pay for an efficiency apartment.
She's made some sort of bargain with the devil, and she's very adamant. Plus, she could give a rat's ass. This is part of the sort of the feeling that I get why she's super stoned, because she doesn't believe anything anybody says. If you tracked it, like every other line of hers basically equates to "come on, man," and that's it, over and over again. Like, you're full of shit.
She's very determined to get to this job, and
Yes.
this is not a job one gets excited about. This is a job that one takes after they've been recently released from prison.
Yes. And maybe she has. We don't really know all of her backstory.
Well, the interesting thing is considering how fast she is killed off.
Mm-hmm.
The other than Alice, the movie spends the most time, quote unquote, developing her character.
Yes, that is true.
She is sort of interestingly set up as though she might be the final girl, and then is just unceremoniously killed off, which I'm not sure if that was done on purpose to sort of, not that it's really setting the audience up for a false sense of security, because the idea of the final girl was still pretty new at this point.
Yes.
But it does make you wonder if they had intended that particular character to be the heroine or the final girl, or whatever you want to call it.
Or they felt that this was some sort of psycho, like, you switch them up, where you're going to become invested in Annie, and then go, oh, well, if they just killed off the person we spent the most amount of time with, who's my age, I don't trust this movie at all. Oh.
That's you know what, I think I like your theory. I think your theory is the most plausible.
Yes. And if this movie had come out in 82 or 83, I think that gag might have worked a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because the tropes would have been immediately more set. Whereas coming out in 1980, there's not a lot of movies in between Halloween and here to set up the idea of a final girl or but that being said, you've had a prologue. The first person you meet after the prologue generally is someone you're going to be around a while, and Annie is not that. She's driven off to the crossroads, both literally and figuratively, by Enos, who gets her into the truck using the cupping your whole ass method.
And she's still totally cool with this. Yeah, this is fine. This is worth getting to my $30 a week camp cook job.
I don't think this is the first time Annie's ass has been cupped. Nor do I believe this is the first time that Annie has used an ass or grass method to get from point A to point B.
Well, you know what they say, nobody rides for free.
No. And no, she pays. She pays with her life. Bum, bum, bum. But not with Enos. Enos tries to talk her out of this. And this is where we get a sequence of her going, come on, man, as he tells her that a kid drowned in 57. 2 counselors died in 58. There's been a quote unquote whole bunch of fires. They tried to open it up one year and the water was bad. And so he's basically saying, quit now. This is a bad idea. You're young and dumb. So millennials,
come home with me.
Listen here. This is not new. This is evidence. Every older generation thinks you're dumb. Every single one. It's happened to all of us. It'll happen to your kids if they live long enough. Every older generation thinks the one that's coming up underneath them by 1 or 2 steps is like fucking idiots.
And sadly, there's probably an equal amount of ass cupping going on these days.
These days, ass cupping is just something that happens in elementary school. I don't know. Rainbow parties and whatnot. What other angry old person tropes can I bring up?
Complaining about selfies.
Complaining about selfies. Sure. All you think about is yourself. Put down that phone and start living life. Don't put down that phone. Don't start living life. Listen to the Kill by Kill podcast, because she gets left off at the crossroads. We do a whole bunch of meeting everybody else, which is really only 5 or 6 other characters. But a whole lot of time happens where we're meeting other people who are also at the camp. We're seeing them interact. And then we come back to Annie still walking aimlessly, and she's picked up by a stranger in a Jeep. This is the same type of Jeep that we will later see Steve Christie driving. So he irrationally. Well, no, the other characters talk about how he's taken off. So he could have taken off in the Jeep conceivably and murdered Annie. So he's a legit red herring.
Right.
All right. I'm going to give him that. Steve is a legit red herring to a degree. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it makes a little bit of sense. And that's all you need. She's picked up by a person in a Jeep. That person whizzes by Camp Crystal Lake. She goes, "Hey, you got to let me off." That person just speeds up. And then she does a tuck and roll out of a moving Jeep into a ditch. And it looks painful. In terms of stunts, that doesn't look easy. I am not at this moment in my life ready to do a tuck and roll out of a moving Jeep.
Is anybody really, I mean, is anybody prepared? That's like one of those things where an ordinary person does it and then miraculously minutes later they're able to just get up and dust themselves off and keep walking. I mean, I think that like normal people would just kind of just lay there for a little while. Like after they're done rolling, they would just kind of, lay there groaning and possibly sobbing.
Oh no, I would not be getting up. I would literally, all the air would be taken out of my lungs. I would just be cursing myself. And these are the things that I now have to consider every time I take an Uber. Can I jump out of this moving vehicle? This is a real thing we have to be worried about now. So she jumps out. The Jeep stops. There's a pretty long run through the forest, which there's zigs, there's zags. She falls and twists her ankle because 80s horror movie. She has to twist her ankle.
Yeah, somehow she's not wearing high heels, but
that's the only thing she isn't wearing. She's wearing every other item of clothing conceivable. And then she backs up to a tree so that she can see everything in front of her, and then she gets her throat slashed.
Yeah, this is probably like I think that generally speaking, other than Jack's death a little later in the film, this is probably the most brutal one because it does resemble a little bit. It's kind of a little snuff filmish. Yes. Because I mean, as far as the acting is concerned, she's not great, but she's trying, which is more than can be said for a lot of the actors in both this one and in further movie entries in the series. Her
panic does ring true. That's for certain. In this particular sequence, you get the sense that she is in real fear for her life.
And it's a little, that she kind of, again, like as a pattern we mentioned in the last one, that of the characters initially just sort of limply giving up and accepting their doom. She does do that, but also just seems to be, I don't know. There's just something about it that it's more bothersome, I guess because she looks so sad about it, which is
she definitely does look sad about it.
Right. It's like, oh shit, I mean, it's like dying in the woods in New Jersey.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. I mean, who wants their life to be summed up dying in the woods in New Jersey?
Right. When you're
unless you're a mobster, that's coming eventually.
Right. And when you're, all because you're trying to get to your $30 a week camp cook job.
It's a lot to die for. Some of it is that the killer here, and spoiler alert for a movie that came out 36 years ago at the time of this recording, Mrs. Voorhees is not like the later iterations of the Voorhees family. She is not a power player. She is sneaky as fuck. And she takes people by surprise. You're looking right, she comes at you left. That's how it goes with her because she is not physically intimidating. She has to kind of be a bit of a middle-aged white lady ninja. And so the idea of like backing yourself up to a tree so you can see an almost 180 degrees or more around you is a decent enough idea. She just didn't know that this woman who's walking in some of the biggest boots you've ever seen in your life, and you will see them later, can walk on leaves without making a sound, sneak up on you and cut you across the throat.
Well, she's had,
so we get that.
She's had a lot of time just sneaking around the woods to
True.
to picture out find the best way to be stealthy.
Right. Well, much more practice than I ever would have had. I have pine trees outside of my house, but I don't have enough trees to really practice on stepping on dry leaves and not making a sound. It's a great skill. She should put that on her resume.
It is definitely a rapidly fading art, I think.
It's true. The young people today don't value that as a skill. They want to take their selfies. They want to listen to podcasts. Oh God. It's quickly disseminated. It's just devolving as we speak. So Annie gets her throat slashed. We got the first real bloody appliance here of the entire series, where you're getting a bit of a magic trick. Her gulping helps and stretching her neck helps open up the wound, and we get some fake blood out of it. It looks outside of the fact that you can kind of see the slice before it happens, is a decent enough magic trick for the time.
It's a little bit. It's a little better than Barry spitting out shoot up Twizzlers in the first opening scene.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So goodbye, Annie. R.I.P.D. We will see her again. Her limp, lifeless body is stacked in Mrs. Voorhees' Jeep, which
like firewood,
like cans you've collected from other people's recycling cans. So now we move back to the main group, where at this point we've met pretty much everybody. You've got Alice, you've got Steve, you've got Marcy, you've got Jack, you've got Brenda. I'm sure Phyllis, Joe Bob. I can't remember all of their names off the top of my head. There's so many people dying in these movies. It's hard to keep track of them. That's why we're helping you.
And generally they make virtually no impression on you whatsoever, except the jokester and the virginal girl, the couple that can't keep their hands off each other for more than 5 minutes at a time.
Yes. And Ned is attached to one of those couples. He is both the jokester and the third wheel to Jack and Marcy. He is introduced basically openly wondering whether or not there'll be girls as good looking as Marcy there. And she goes, "Is all that you ever think about sex?" And his reply is, "No, sometimes I just think about kissing women." And I think maybe Ned might be covering up for something. That's just not a response that I buy.
No.
Necessarily. Ned, throughout the rest of his time in the film, is spent horsing around or doing goof-em-ups.
Yeah, Ned is the jokester of the group. There's one.
Yes, he's the prankster.
There's virtually one in every one of the movies. They are always the character that the audience is happiest when they are brutally killed, because let's face it, no one wants to be stuck in a cabin out in the middle of the woods with a guy who is constantly playing jokes. He's a prankster. Look, I'm pretending to be hanging from a tree. That's hilarious. Look, I look like I've just committed suicide. Why don't you love me yet? And the
only thing that makes it work for George Clooney is he looks like George Clooney. Otherwise, even like, fuck that guy with his constant pranks. That's the only thing that makes it worthwhile for him. And Ned is like that. He's dressing up as an Indian. He's pretending to drown. He's useless when a snake is in your cabin. He is kind of a useless prankster.
He's awful, and I am actually disappointed that you don't get to see his character killed. One thing I did observe while doing a little research on this movie that was troubling, or not so much troubling as baffling.
Okay, I'm waiting.
The some of the characters, most of them are not given the courtesy of having a last name when in the credits. Because fuck it, they're gonna die. They're gonna die eventually anyway. But Ned does have a last name.
Okay.
And his last name is Rubenstein. Now, when we skip it now, this will be a little while, but when we eventually get to part 3, there is another character who is the joke 'em up, the prankster, the goofy guy of the movie. That is Shelley.
Yes. Now, memorably Shelley.
Now, Shelley's last name is Finkelstein.
Oh, no.
I'm trying to wonder if there's some sort of Jewish trickster motif I'm not aware of here.
Please, well, no, don't write into us if you've heard of some sort of trend of Jewish pranksters and they need to be eradicated in really awful ways. Oh no, Friday the 13th.
I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them too much credit for trying to go into some sort of Jewish folklore for these movies. I just think it's just a weird coincidence, but that these atrocious characters are both men of Hebraic origin.
Oh, no.
And probably the characters that the audience gets the most delight in seeing them killed off. And at least I'm pretty sure you do see Shelley get killed on screen, which is
yes, you do.
Yeah, which is.
Oh no, I don't know that you do. I think you see the end result of it.
I'm looking at his wiki.
Yes.
Which no. He okay. We don't see him. We see the aftermath where we see him dying.
Yes,
but we don't actually see face and injure him.
And the girl who discovers him thinks that he's playing a joke.
Right. I think my favorite thing about the wiki page for him is that it lists known relatives: Walter Finkelstein, father, and his mother, Mrs. Finkelstein.
It seemed almost destiny that she ended up married to Mr. Finkelstein when you think about it. Oh dear. Oh my goodness. Well, that is quite a revelation that I did not see coming.
I also feel never mind. We'll get to Shelley when we get to part 3.
Yeah, please. That'll be an episode unto itself.
The character of Shelley is just a wonderful gift to be slowly opened. much like he was in the movie eventually.
Yes, very slowly opened, much to his dismay. So Ned, another person who will, we presume, slowly be opened around the neck. He's the prankster. The one part that I really love with Ned is when he shows up in full unfortunate Native American drag, complete with his Miami Dolphins jersey tied around his midsection. And then a bike cop rolls in for absolutely no reason. Jack rolls in. He immediately thinks everyone is high, which may or may not be true. And Jack goes, "Hey, nice bike." And the cop goes, "Hey, would you just walk off a spaceship?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "So what have you been smoking? Colombian Gold, Rez, hash, the weed?" Like, Rez? What is that? I've never heard of Colombian Gold before.
We need to stop and point out that the cop in this scene, which I am going to be relying on a lot for this, is named Officer Dorf.
Officer Dorf,
like as in on golf.
Yeah, of the on golf family of Dorfs. The only other thing I know about that bike cop is he had never ridden on a motorcycle before that scene. And like any good actor, when he was asked ahead of time, "Have you ever ridden a motorcycle?" he said yes. He never practiced. And so when he rides off, he practically falls off the fucking thing.
It's like when Pee-wee's Big Adventure, when he goes to the biker bar, they give him the bike and to continue his trip to Hollywood, he drives into the sign and immediately falls over. That's like one of my favorite scenes in that movie.
And he's like 1 second away from that happening. Crazy Ralph shows up, just hiding in the pantry for no damn reason at one point here. And
trying to find that 2 gallon can of chocolate pudding.
Yes. Well, it's tasty stuff. And if you can find it for free, man, free chocolate pudding, who turns that down? Then eventually night comes, or at least sunset, and Jack and Marcy, as we have seen them from moment one, are just waiting for an excuse to run off and bang in a camp cot. And Ned kicks rocks and down by the shore and just wanders off. And then he looks at a cabin, and that's the last we see him until we find him later. While Jack and Marcy are having sex, his body is in the bunk above them, bleeding out because his throat has been slashed.
Well, yeah, that's just sometimes you people add a little incense, little Depeche Mode music. Yeah, Jack and Marcy have the corpse of their possible frenemy. I mean, I really can't see how anybody could really enjoy spending time with this guy, but just exsanguinating you just a mere 6 feet or so above their heads.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, to be certain, that you would not smell it, that people get up. Marcy at one point walks off to go to the bathroom, and she doesn't see the body. But then again, she just had sex with Jack, and that'll take a lot out of you.
She's just in that.
But we'll get to that.
She's in that blinding afterglow.
Yes.
Of sex with Kevin Bacon.
Just thinking about it now, I can't think about anything else. But we have to, because we've come to the point in our podcast that we try to do every single time. And that is, would you rather? Gina Radcliffe, would you rather have your throat slashed in the middle of the Jersey woods, or would you have your throat slashed and have your body deposited on the top bunk of where people are screwing on the bottom?
I'm going to have to go with the latter, because Annie's death was just really prolonged. And, from the whole, just kind of, being sort of menaced by everybody in the diner, and then Enos being creepy, and then her killer, which obviously we know is Mrs. Voorhees. It's possible that Ned went hard, but we don't really know. So I'm gonna take the benefit of the doubt and just say that she just came up behind him and just took him out quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna back your play on this. I don't believe that Ned, quote unquote, went out hard. I just don't think that he's that kind of guy. I think he was lured into a place. He was taken by surprise. I don't want my body to be discovered while people are having sex.
Well, no, I think you're going to be dead anyway. So what does it matter?
Well, there's my family to think about.
No one was having sex with your body.
I'm going to go with Ned as well. I am going to choose Ned as well. I'm going to back your play here. I think dying well aware of what's happening in the middle of the woods is a scarier death. So being the yellow belly that I am, I'm going to choose Ned's departure from this world. Goodbye, Ned. R.I.P.D. Okay, so this brings us to the end of yet another wonderful Kill by Kill podcast. Gina, I apologize. The previous episode, I forgot to ask where people could find you on the internet. And by that, I mean the stuff that you produce, not actually your address.
Well, I write about 70s and 80s television. Relevant Point, it won't be the most recent post by the time people listen to this, but I did recently write about a TV movie featuring the one of the stars of Friday the 13th, a Mr. Kevin Bacon, in a as if there were any other stars in this movie besides Kevin Bacon, but
right.
He was in a couple years after this movie, he was in a movie called The Demon Murder Case. which is based on a true story centered around Ed and Lorraine Warren, which lets you know right away that it is not, in fact, a true story.
Oh, yeah.
But you can read that, plus much more, at tuneintonight.wordpress.com.
Oh, people, check it out. Okay, if you would like to reach out to us, there's a good way to do it. We have a Gmail. It's called killbykillpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about these characters, about Friday the 13th in particular. That would be awesome. You can reach out to us on Twitter at killbykillpod. And hey, you got a whole 140 characters just let loose on us, if that's your deal. Anyways, if you have something very nice to say about us, we'd love for you to rate and review us on iTunes. That'll help us get heard and seen by more people. That would be fantastic. So until next time, when the body count continues, for myself and for Gina, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Kill by Kill is produced by We Write Good and is intended for entertainment purposes only. Friday the 13th is owned by Paramount Pictures. Jason is owned by New Line Cinema. No infringement is intended. Kill by Kill logo was designed by Josh Hollis. Visit him at joshhollis.com. The Kill by Kill theme was created exclusively for us by Revenge Body. Get the whole track and much, much more at revengebodymemphis.bandcamp.com today.